Hey, this is Mr. Beckstrom, and I just wanted to do a quick calculator tutorial to help with project one. I just wanted to input some data and to graph that data to create the lines of best fit, which are the regression equations, store those, and to find where they intersect. This project's asking quite a bit, so I just wanted to make sure that you can kind of do the basics here. So the first thing I want to do is when I get all of my sets of data, they asked us to put the first points in L1 and L2. So the X value will go in L1, the Y value will go in L2. So we're going to hit Stat, Edit, and I've already put it in here. So L1 and L2, so like for example, 53 is a point, 42, 2.3, that's also a point. So I'm going to put the first 8 points in L1 and L2, kind of like what it asks in the project there. And then it gives us a second set of data. Those are points too. I'm going to put those in L3 and L4. So the first point goes here, that would be 15, 6.1. The second point goes here, that'd be 106.7. And I'll put all 8 pieces of data there. So now that I have it all in my stat edit, my list in my calculator, the next thing I want to do is I want to kind of plot this, and I want to differentiate the two different sets of data, because L1 and L2 are one set of data and L3 and L4 are a different set of data. So we're trying to kind of find out some information on those two sets. So I'm going to go to the stat plot, and notice I've already turned these on, but normally they're in the off position. So if I go to the first plot here, I'm going to press enter to turn that on. We're doing a plot here, so we're going to use this one, the first graph there. My X list, I want to use L1. My Y list, I want to use L2. And I decided to use a little plus symbol in order to mark those points on the graph. And I would have the option of giving them a color, which not all these TI-83, 84 calculators will do, but if you do, give it a color. And once I've turned that on, then I'm going to go ahead and hit second Y equals again to go back. I'm going to go to my second plot, which I've already turned on, but you'll have to turn that on by pressing enter there. We want a scatter plot. That's the first graph there. But this time I want to use the L3 and L4 lists, which is a different set of data. And then I want to use a different marker, so I use a little square marker here. And I also wanted to use a different color if I have that option, just so I can clearly see what is what. Now that I have all of this on here, I'm going to go to Zoom, and Zoom 9 is Zoom Stat. That means it kind of sets our window according to our stats. And hit 9. And here's my two sets of data. So my first set of data looks like it's a positive sloped line kind of going lower left to upper right. And then we have a much lesser sloped line here with the red dots. That was our second set of data that we used. So we get a pretty good idea of what it looks like here. If I had to guess, they kind of intercept somewhere around right here. But we're going to do a little bit more before we kind of decide that. So the next thing I want to do is I want to find the regression equation, and then I want to graph that line of best fit for each one of those. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to Stat, I'm going to go to Calculate, I'm going to do the lin reg, which is the fourth one down. And for the first one here, for my X list, I want to do L1, so it has L2, so I have to change that. So I'm going to hit second one, which you'll see there's a little blue L1 there. For the Y list, that one's good. And I actually want to store this regression equation in my Y1. So I'll show you how to do that. So I hit vars, go to Y variables, enter, enter. Now it's going to store that equation in my Y1, so I don't have to write it down and then store it later. So I hit calculate, and here's my regression equation right here. So it's in the form of y is equal to ax plus b, where a is 0.05376 and b is 0.457. This R thing is not something that we're going to do, but it shows us how much of a linear correlation that we have. And since this value is very close to 1, we have a very strong linear correlation. That means the points fall very close to a straight line. All right. So going back to this, if I were to write out the linear regression equation, I would just replace the A with, if I was going 3 decimal places, it would be 0.054, and that would be X plus 0.457. All right, now if we go back to our graph, we see that it puts that in there for us. Why? Because we stored it in our Y1 here, and it stores a whole lot of decimal places in there. So this is the line of best fit. And what that means is this line is closer to these points than any other line would be. It's the one that fits it the best. All right. Now we're going to do the second line here. So I'm going to go to Stat, Calculate, LinReg again. This time I'm going to use L3 and L4. So second 3 for L3, second 4 for L4. I want to store this in my Y2 equation, not my Y1, but my Y2. So I'm going to go over to vars, Y variables, enter, go down to my Y2, enter, and hit calculate. And once again, we have a pretty strong linear correlation. This value is very close to 1. And then this is our equation here. So it's y equals to 0.007x plus 5.986. That's how we would write it down. Notice that the A is going to be our slope. So we have a very non-steep slope, very low slope. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and go back to graph, and now we can see what both of these lines look like. And notice how close those points are to those lines. So we really have a correlation between the points. All right, and then the last thing I want to do is I want to see where are these points intersecting at. And in order to find that, I can go to second trace, that's my calculate. I'm going to go down to my intersect function, and I'm going to first choose the first line, which is that one, enter, and the second line. So if I had more than 2 lines, then I'd have to switch it between lines, but I only have 2 lines, so enter. It says, do I want to guess what it is? No, I don't want to guess, so I just hit enter again, and it tells me that my intersection here is at the X value of 119.05 and the Y value of 6.9-ish. And so that's where I would expect these two things to come together. So for example, if my X value were my years, then I would expect them to be the same at year 119. All right, well, if you all have any questions, please let me know, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.